everyone, I'm Gina, the artist behind Fibers and Design, and today I'm going to tell you 6 tips for weaving faster. Let's get started. All right, tip number 1 for weaving faster is using a shed stick. Now, a shed stick is a tool used to open and close the shed of the warp. So what does that mean? It makes it easier for you to weave and put the weft yarns in between. Now you can use a shed stick or even a heddle bar. A heddle bar will really speed it up because with the shed stick you won't have to alternate between using a tapestry needle and the shed stick. Okay, so that's one way that you can weave a little bit faster.
Now, I know that I mentioned the heddle bar as an option in passing, but I would definitely recommend this, or I would definitely include this in the list and kind of make this an 8th tip for weaving faster, and using the heddle bar as its own separate thing, because also the shed stick is very powerful, but a heddle bar with just a turn of the bar itself can help open and close the shed quite quickly and easily.
And number 2 is creating a string heddle. Now, accompanying a shed stick with a string heddle will be really helpful. This way you can alternate between the two. Now, I would recommend either using a heddle bar or a shed stick and a string heddle. This will make things go a little bit faster. The next one, number 3, is quite simple. Use thicker yarns. Now, the thinner the yarn you use, the longer it will take you to weave. But if you're using a thicker yarn, it will take up a lot more space and weave a lot faster. For example, using yarns that are this thin are going to take a lot more time to fill up a space than using other yarns that are thicker, such as this yarn that's a little bit more medium. This will still take a while to weave with, same as this one here. These are a little bit thicker than this one. But using something chunky, using something chunky like this one is going to take up so much space and it was going to cut down on weaving time. Same thing with roving, oh man, lots of yarn. But something such as this, it will take up a lot of space depending on, you can pull the roving apart and use small chunks or use like very large chunks as well, large sections of it. And so this can help cut down the weaving time and take up a lot of space, and you'll be done with projects a lot faster. So, I mean, there are advantages and disadvantages of using thicker yarns versus thinner yarns, and that's something we could talk about in another video as well. Number 4, using bulky patterns. Now, what's a bulky pattern? Using thicker yarns with any pattern will be a bulky pattern, right? But I'm talking about patterns that take up a lot of space. Things such as raya knots and sumuk weave. These can use a lot more yarns and create a lot thicker pattern. For example, when using raya knots, here we can see I have lots of raya knots and they are taking up a lot of space. You can also see this a lot more clearly, I think, when you look at the back of the weaving. In the back of the weaving, you can see that this pattern can take up a lot of space with the knots in the back. Yeah, so you can really take a look at that and see for yourself. Okay. Now, yeah, I think the back of weaving can really tell a lot about the weaving. Now, the other thing here, so as you can see here, this is the sumuk weave and it's really taking up a lot of the yarn. Now, this was actually done with a thinner yarn, but what I like to do is with even using a thinner yarn, I like to double it up, triple it up, quadruple it up, and just to get it a lot thicker. So even if you're using a thin yarn, you can still thicken it up and create a nice thicker pattern with it. With the raya knots, as I said before, they can take up a lot of space, especially when you cut them short. Now, you can also use raya knots to take up space. So here, there's nothing on the back of this, right? There's nothing here, but it takes up a lot more of the visual interest, right? So even though there's no yarn under it, it's still taking up space. Here's another example of lots of raya knots. But here, taking up a space like this can help. But the downside is that raya knots, to build up raya knots to make such a texture does take a bit of time. So it might be great for taking up space, but it takes a lot of time to get this kind of effect. And I wanted to compare it to just a plain weave. So when you do plain weave, you're just relying on the weft yarns to make a pattern or design or effect. But unlike the other ones, when I'm just using here, I've just used a very thin or kind of a medium yarn here. But it doesn't take up, it takes up as much space as the thickness of the yarn. So it's the big difference between using rye knots and sumuk. They take up a lot more space because, yeah, they just take up a lot more space. Okay, and number 5, accent negative space. You can create visual interest when weaving by accenting negative space. Now that means that when you're weaving, you can leave some spaces blank. Did you know that? Yeah, of course. Now this can help create some effect with this empty space and help balance things. If you're still unclear about what negative space is, it's the space that you don't fill in. So here in this case, although this is a circle, in the outside here is a square, the negative space is this part here inside. Now I could fill this in, or I also could create visual interest in leaving it blank. It depends on the weaving. Maybe I have some interesting things here, maybe I have a full circle here, and I want to show some relationship between the two. It depends, but you can use this to help create some visual interest. Another example that I have for negative space is with scalloping. Now here, if you remember the scalloping tutorial that I made, here we have these blank spaces. One of these is filled, the negative space here is filled, but these are open. Now I could fill them up if I want, but as you see, you can create some contrast between the spaces by filling one in and leaving the others empty or both empty, and yeah. So negative space can also be something creative that you use, but you want to make sure that you keep it balanced and just like with the other designs. The last tip I have for you for weaving faster is by creating a schedule. Now I know you can't rush the creative process. Absolutely agree with this, but I would encourage you to create projects that you can finish in a reasonable time span. Now, not only will this help keep the tension of the warp better, but it will also help you get on with your projects and get things going, you know. I think that it's important to have a goal with your weaving, with a lot of other things, but kind of just set a schedule of when you want it to be done. That way you can leave space for your loom and have other things to do. But those were my 6 tips for you for weaving faster. Now I'm sure that you might have some other ways, and if you do, then please leave them a comment down below with your favorite way of weaving faster. Now again, as I said before, take your time, be creative, weave what you like. But if you are in a rush or if you want to find a better way to get your work done a little bit quicker, then I hope that these tips help you. If you enjoyed this video and it helped you, then please leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more weaving tutorials. Please also check my website at fibersanddesign.com for even more weaving tutorials and information. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time. Bye.